Amazon is bringing three new shows. The first one that we're going to talk about is the one that I know, and it's Lazarus. And it's a comic book from writer Greg Rucka, who wrote for Marvel's Jessica Jones, the Netflix series. He's also done stuff like Gotham Central over at DC. He just finished up his second run for Wonder Woman over there. And this is basically set in an alternative near future where the world is divided up into 16 rival families, and they're all run like in a feudal system. And so you follow around the Carlisle family throughout this, and each family has their champion, which they call a Lazarus because it never dies. Well, theoretically it never dies. And they're in the middle right now of, in the comic book world side of things, the Lazarus X plus 66 series, like little mini series that they're taking a break from the main story from to sort of fill out the world. Because until I read the article that there's 16 families, it never fully clicked that there's 16 families.
That there's so much, because it's not something that it states the central plot to you. It lets it build, which is what a good story does. It doesn't say this is a story about 16 families and these are the Tates and these are the Campbells. No, that was soap. But yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that it's a slow reveal of how much and how big this entire thing is. I will say that Amazon, we know, is looking for its Game of Thrones. This sounds very much like it could appeal to a Game of Thrones watcher who's looking to fill that hole as that series is either on a hiatus or is about to finish up.
And the brilliant thing that I have with this is Greg Rucka is going to serve as writer and executive producer on the project, along with Michael Lark, his co-creator, who also did the artwork for Captain America: The Winter Soldier comic book. Or I don't know if he did the series that Winter Soldier movie is based off of, but he did do some stuff for Winter Soldier. He's got great artwork. I'll leave it at that. And Angela Cheng Kaplan, all three of them are going to serve as executive producers. The other one is Snow Crash, which is based on Neil Stephenson's cult novel. It's a 1 hour science fiction drama set in the futuristic America. In reality, hero protagonist. I get it. It's because it's spelled, for people who don't realize why I'm laughing, Hiro protagonist. So I'm like, haha, it's the Japanese
like Hero from Heroes.
Yes, delivers pizzas for Uncle Enzo's Cosa Nostra Pizza Incorporated, but in the metaverse, he's a warrior prince plunging headlong into the enigma of a new computer virus that's striking down hackers everywhere. He races along the neon-lit streets on a search and destroy mission for the shadowy virtual villain. It's a co-production with Paramount Television, and it is executive produced by Joe Cornish, who works very much with Edgar Wright, and he was one of the writers on Ant-Man, I believe. Him and Edgar Wright did the first draft, but then Joe Cornish did Attack the Block, and Frank Marshall, who was involved with Back to the Future.
Yeah, this sounds like a perfect thing. Like a big thing that's popular in books right now is RPG lit, which of course stems from the Ready Player One readers who are hungering for more of that stuff. This seems along the lines, like it sounds like it could be a TV series of a Ready Player One style story, which, yeah, that's probably a good thing to bet on right now, especially as that movie is coming out and is probably going to be very huge. And the book has been very successful. Ernest Cline has been very successful as a writer because of it. I can easily see that this would be something to jump in with. It sounds fun. It sounds like it's got a little bit of tongue in cheek, kind of like The Tick does, where the hero isn't necessarily the hero that you would expect. Yeah, it sounds cute. It sounds interesting. It definitely sounds like a check out the pilot and see how it goes.
Yeah. Sorry, I just did a Google search for Ernest Cline to pull up his Wikipedia because I wanted to see if he wrote anything, because I know Ready Player One is his first novel he wrote that got adapted to screen work. And I just happened to see in the pictures, one of the pictures was TJ Miller from a different project. I'm like, wait, why is there a picture of TJ Miller? But sorry, that was a complete aside. Yeah, Snow Crash, I had heard about this from Brian Brushwood on, I think it was the NSFW show, where he was talking about it like, oh my gosh, you ever read it? Or it was always the thing that he plugged whenever they had the ad read for Audible.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh yeah, just go check out Snow Crash. It's really good. I think he even said at one point, like, this is his friend's test. You can't be friends with him if you haven't read Snow Crash and didn't like it or something like that.
I remember there was the fantasy series that he and Leo used to talk about that was like that as well.
Talking about the King Killer Chronicles?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Patrick Rothfuss is King Killer Chronicles.
Yeah, they mention that one a lot as their friend test too.
Yeah. And then the third movie, which this is the one that had Beat excited, is Ringworld. This is co-production with MGM and is based on Larry Niven's sci-fi series from the 70s. And it tells the story of Louis Gridley Wu, a bored man celebrating his 200th birthday in a technologically advanced future Earth. Upon being offered one of the open positions on a voyage, Louis joins a young woman and two aliens to explore Ringworld, the remote artificial ring beyond quote-unquote known space. Hearing these synopses for the three programs, along with the next paragraph talks about in an internal email to Amazon employees, studio head Roy Price said that he feels quote unquote bullish about what's in store for 2018, 2019. I feel like, okay, Amazon is at least doing the let's test the pasta and throw it at the wall thing, which means we're going to get at least a lot of great pilots for shows.
Yeah, I mean, Ringworld is a series that has some huge pedigree in the sci-fi world, and it's hard sci-fi, as I understand it. Larry Niven, also co-writer with recently lost Jerry Pournelle. So big pedigree on this. And again, it feels like this is something that's being made for a specific audience and to serve that specific audience. As we discussed before the show, there is now the new Star Trek series Discovery that is out, and there's the Orville, and they're two sides of a similar coin. The Orville feels more like classic Star Trek, at least from Next Generation up, and the Star Trek Discovery is a much darker tone, feels more hard sci-fi to a degree, but it also is kind of a modern dark take that doesn't agree with every Star Trek fan. But Ringworld is something that if they adapt it to what it truly is that it's going to meet the expectations of those old school Star Trek fans and probably set up things for new fans at the same time. It's like it's going to have the potential to pull a lot of people in. And again, if you're looking at something to be the next Game of Thrones, while it's a very different genre, it's that kind of story that can pull people because there's so much to yank from those books.
No, yeah. And I mean, that's honestly where I'm seeing with all these, with everything that they're doing. Like the article mentions that they're doing Jack Reacher still and
Jack Ryan.
Jack Ryan, and that they've got several deals with people like Robert Kirkman, Sharon Horgan, Amy Sherman Palladino, and Dan Palladino.
So as we were talking about some of the problems that ABC has going on, part of the problem is when you see people like Shonda Rhimes going over to Netflix, and then you see people like Robert Kirkman going over to Amazon. When you're stealing the content creators that they've come to rely on these stations away to these new services, it's going to make those other stations really have to work harder to get more talent in. They can't just rely on what's already been there. Greg Berlanti can't direct every fucking superhero show, no matter how hard he tries.
Well, okay, are we at the point where we can just like sum it up to comic book show? I mean, now that he's doing Riverdale and Sabrina.
Yeah. And I don't hate the guy for it, but he's also doing Titans, and he's got Black Lightning coming out. And so it's like there is a Berlanti verse. It's funny to see DC's film content be split up into three things. There is the animated universe, which used to be the Dini verse, but has kind of skeeved away from that and is kind of like trying to go back to it with Bruce Timm being a part of it, although Bruce Timm just seems to think like every female character wants to get banged by a Batman. You have the DC film universe, which still doesn't seem to know what it wants to be. Are we together? Are we apart? Who knows? We're like Ross Perot. We'll just keep changing our fucking minds. And then you have the Berlantiverse, and people call it the Berlantiverse. And it doesn't matter if the shows are connected or not, because it's like fucking Greg Berlanti. Here it is. Every fucking show that we have is like, we want a Titan show. Sure you do. I'm Greg Berlanti. Let's make that happen. I want an Ambush Bug show. Of course you do. Fucking give it here, man. I got arms like wide as fucking Egyptian gods and shit. Just make that shit my plate. Just give me, I'll keep eating it and shitting it out. I don't hate him at all. He's right. He was obviously a good choice because it's led to a lot of success for the CW and for the Arrowverse overall. But I don't think we're going to call it the Arrowverse anymore. It started out because that was the first show, but it's all Greg Berlanti's leadership that's made this stuff happen. I think it's fine in its own way. But again, that's really dangerous when you've got an Amazon and a Netflix and now a Disney streaming service that's coming up. and CBS has their streaming service, and all these other things. They're going to want to start stealing the talent away. Who do you think they're going to aim for? Do you think they're going to aim for the person who does Crazy Ex-Girlfriend? They should, because she's awesome. But no, they're going to set their sights on Greg Berlanti. They're going to set their sights on the guy who's developed 10 different shows that are all superheroes, and they go, you know what? We have a lot of Marvel properties over here, and we kind of realized that Scott Buck just rhymes with Buck to all of our shows. He's bucking it up for everybody.
Truck.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say tuck, because I feel like they tucked the show right up in his ass. But I just, if Marvel had that coup, like when the comics would happen and you'd see Marvel stealing writers away from DC, and then DC stealing artists away from Marvel, and it's always a big deal, like, oh, we just signed this guy to an exclusive contract. It's like, oh shit, what the fuck's gonna happen to my Avengers book, or what's gonna happen to X-Men now? If Marvel got that coup of they steal Greg Berlanti away and have him develop superhero shows for their own streaming service that is not the stuff that Netflix already has, but a whole new line of stuff of their characters that they haven't gotten to yet, and what he could do, that would so fuck up CW. Because look how much they've invested in that.
Not only that, you get his whole group of producers. Yeah,
you get the Horde.
So you get Ellie Adler and Mark Guggenheim, and you get Speedweed to do the music, and you get all these people. I only remember Speedweed because he does the Flash music, and it's because his name is Speedweed. I'm like, that is a baller fucking name, dude.
Yeah, and it's, if only I had some confidence that Disney was the kind of company that could acquire people from other things. Like, if Disney only had an interest in getting other people's properties and bringing them under their umbrella, it's too bad that they just can't get their shit together and acquire something like a Marvel or an ABC or a Pixar. Or anything else.
I mean, you can't say that their producers don't know about Marvel, because Mark Guggenheim writes for Marvel Comics.
Right. No, absolutely. But that's sort of a different entity. How many times do you see the DC film writer or DC TV writer writing for the opposite in the comics? Because they're the ones who snatched them up, but they don't really care. It's a little indiscriminate. It's like nobody gives a shit what comics you write when you're making TV shows or movies. But I mean, nobody in the industry does. It's like that's small fucking potatoes. To the people who run those companies and own those companies, it's small potatoes. Disney probably has very little recognition that they own a comic book company, other than the fact that it's an IP farm for them. That's absolutely the case. But yeah, if they pulled a Berlanti in, or if they said, you know what, maybe you're tired of superheroes, what would you think about doing a few Star Wars series for us? What could you do with Star Wars? Anything you want me to do. Have I ever shown you what I did to Kip Winger? Boom. There you go. It's just, that is the biggest fucking draw for almost any modern day creator. Someone who grew up with Star Wars, and it's like, that's the dream. And when it went from there's one movie made every 50 years to there's one movie made a year to, hey, we might be doing Star Wars live action TV series or movies direct to our streaming service and stuff like that, it opens up, like, everybody gets a shot at it now.
And Growley is pointing out that, he doubts that Berlanti and Co. They will have to cede control to the mouse. And I'm like, I'm sitting here thinking, no, because if the mouse, if the House of Mouse sees what they're doing with everything under their control, then why would they have to cede control?
Well, the other thing is that Greg Berlanti, how do I say this? Greg Berlanti did shows before he was doing Arrow and Flash and everything. Greg Berlanti did shows that weren't other people's properties. Those shows didn't work. Those shows didn't collect people. So when he got this role of doing stuff with the DC characters and it took off for him, now he's a powerhouse. He's not the guy who did Eli Stone anymore. He's the guy who did Flash and Heroes of Tomorrow and made these things viable properties. So he's already working. He's already a kept man.
Dude,
Let's put it that way.
Eli Stone.
Yeah, I'm not saying it was a bad show. I'm just saying nobody fucking watched it. But he's already company owned.
Yeah.
He's no longer the guy who does Jack and Bobby. He probably isn't as interested in going back and doing another Jack and Bobby because now he gets paychecks. And he's not struggling. He pitches something and it's like, it doesn't even have to be his idea. He's just like, yeah, I'll make that. Where are you going to send my truck of money? Over here? Just over here? That's great.
For more on this Galactic Network podcast, go to gncast.com. That's gncast.com.